Hello. The 13 Principles of the Faith, as they're often called, is one of the most famous writings of the illustrious Moses Maimonides. But most people know these principles only by way of Hebrew summaries that were written by anonymous people. The two most famous are the list of I believes, Ani Mamin, that are found in almost all prayer books and which many Jews recite daily, and the hymn, the litany, Yigdal Elohim Chai, which many congregations sing at the end of the Friday night service, and which is actually a summary of Maimonides' 13 principles. Very few people actually know Maimonides' own text and where he lays out these principles, because it's in his commentary to the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, the chapter in Sanhedrin that begins, Kol Yisrael Yesh Lahem Chelek L'Olam Haba, and therefore it's called Chelek. It speaks about those who are accorded a portion in the world to come, and of course, those who are accorded or denied, their fates are based on their merits and demerits, their accomplishments or lack thereof, and therefore it's a good opportunity for the Talmud and then for Maimonides to go into questions of theology. And Maimonides has a long introductory essay to his line-by-line commentary to this chapter in Sanhedrin, and at the very end of that essay, in which he talks about all sorts of issues in theology, he says that in his opinion, anyone who doesn't assimilate to himself or herself, who doesn't convince himself of the truth of 13 principles, really has no place in the Jewish people. And from this list of 13, to which Maimonides made some significant additions and alterations later on, the later writers distilled these digests of the 13 in almost in a catechism form as in the Ani Mamins. And of course, there were many, many commentaries, some even book length, for instance, one by Don Yitzchak Abravanel. So what I would like to do in this, and in the full text of these principles, many details are added that are unknown to the general public. And one of these is a detail found in the full text of Maimonides' 12th principle, which has to do with the messianic age or the messianic person, and I'll get to that issue later on, which he tells us that we must pray for the Messiah. This is part of the 12th, it's an integral, mandatory part of the 12th principle of a belief or conviction is a better term, about the messianic age, the messianic person. And so in this video, I would like to read to you my translation from the original Judaeo-Arabic, because Maimonides' commentary on the Mishnah was written in Arabic, not in Hebrew, and then go into just two of the many questions that come up. One, can we identify a specific prayer that Maimonides may have had in mind when he speaks of praying for the Messiah? And then, three, talk about the odd fate of this principle and this idea of it being associated with prayer, in which it begins with the imperative to pray for the Messiah basically falling out of the discussion for centuries. Most namely, no commentator that I've seen on the 13 principles knows of it or raises it for discussion. But then, in the last several generations, since the Holocaust, and especially since the establishment of the State of Israel, the anonymous Hebrew summation of this principle, Ani Ma'amin B'Viat HaMashiach, has become a song that is ritually sung almost as a part of, I would say, more Israeli civic religion, and not just Jewish religious activity, in a very odd manner when we take into consideration who does and does not actually believe in the coming of the Messiah. So this is what I was trying to do in this video. So now I will read with some brief remarks interjected from my English translation of Maimonides' text of the 12th principle, taken from the edition of my late mentor, Rav Yosef Kafach. And I will try to include in the description of this video a document that has the text both in Judaeo-Arabic and in English. So if you want, you can print that out and follow along, or just listen. So I'm reading to you from my translation. The 12th foundation is the messianic era. He has it in Hebrew, Yemot HaMashiach. It is, or it means, to be confident in his or its coming, and in order to be true that he or it is not keeping us waiting. I say he or it because there is a certain ambiguity in much of what follows, though not all of it, whether the referent is it, the messianic era, or he, the messianic person. Now you may say, well, what's the difference? When the Messiah comes, he will usher in the messianic era, and so it's basically the same thing. But it's not, because there are many Jews, famous Jews, people who are insistent that they are perfectly good Jews and have no fault in their Jewish beliefs, who do not believe in the coming of the messianic person, and for whom the messianic era is sort of some idea of a better future. Belief in the messianic era is a form of optimism. It's a form of saying things today may look not very good, but there will be a happy ending. So we have to make it clear that Maimonides insists in the belief in the messianic person, a flesh and blood descendant from King David, even though in the course of the first part of this principle, it's not clear if he's speaking always of the messianic era or the messianic person. Now, he says, and we should believe that the Messiah is not keeping us waiting. A verse from Habakkuk, if he tarries, wait for him. But do not calculate its precise time, and do not try to interpret scriptural texts so as to compute the time of his coming. The sages say, a curse upon those who calculate the end of days. One should believe in his aggrandizement and love and praying for him. Another odd formulation. Does it really mean to believe in aggrandizing the Messiah or believe in loving the Messiah? One should aggrandize the Messiah and love the Messiah and, of course, pray for him. Well, dua lahu in Arabic, in keeping with what every prophet from Moses to Malachi has said about him. Whoever has any doubt about it or makes light of the matter puts the lie to the Torah that is promised it expressly in the pericopes, in the parshiot, Bilam and Atem Nitzavim. And now here, there's no ambiguity. From here on, there's no ambiguity that Maimonides is talking about the messianic person, because he says the complete foundation. In other words, this up to now, he's just given a sort of a brief expose, but the full-fledged foundation includes the belief that only a descendant of David is king of Israel, and specifically a descendant of Solomon. So Maimonides is making a point here that the Messiah is a direct descendant not just of David, but from Solomon and not from any other of David's children. Anyone who disputes the matter of this family, the royal house of Israel, the house of David, denies God and the words of his prophets. So now I will fast forward to the question as to what prayer Maimonides may have had in mind. I say fast forward because I'm skipping over hundreds of years of discussion, analysis, commentary on the 13 principles, all of which, as far as I can tell, have ignored the idea of praying for the Messiah for one reason or another. And the only person I saw who has taken a position on the matter is the late Rav Nachum Rabinovich, the head of Yeshivat Ma'ale Adumim, some with a PhD in mathematics and a extremely productive and incisive thinker. He felt that the prayer that Maimonides had in mind is a prayer that's listed in the Talmud in Masechet Sanhedrin, in Masechet Brachot, 17a, Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, a prayer that was associated, a private prayer of Rab Alexandri, which reads in Hebrew, Ribon ha'olamim, golui v'yadua lefanecha, sheritzonenu lasot retzoncha, mi ma'akev, so'or shebe'isa, v'shiyabud malchuyot, yiratzon lefanecha, shetatzilenu miyadam, v'neshuv la'asot retzoncha b'levav shalem. So, Lord of the universe, I'm translating freely, you know very well that we want to fulfill your will. What's preventing us? So'or shebe'isa, the yeast in the dough. If you have any ideas how to interpret that metaphor, please write them in the comments. V'shiyabud malchuyot, which is said to be the characteristic feature of our exile before redemption. We're subjugated to the various political regimes under which we live. And then the prayer, Yiratzon Fanecha, may it be your will to save us from them so that we can return to fulfilling your will with a full heart. Now, it's a very beautiful prayer, and it is a prayer for redemption, but there's no mention at all of the Messiah or the Messianic age. Moreover, nowhere at all does Maimonides or anyone else that I know of say that we're obligated to say this prayer once a day, once a year, once in a lifetime. It's a private prayer of Rabbi Alexandri, which the Talmud thought, worth sharing with us, but that's it. So what could have he had in mind? Well, I have my own idea. And it comes from the same commentary to the Mishnah, the same introductory essay to Perek Chelek. When Maimonides mentions the Mashiach, when he mentions the Messiah, he adds right away in Hebrew two words, Mehera Yigaleh. It may be revealed quickly, maybe be discovered quickly, may reveal himself quickly. And I think this is what he has in mind. It means that you never say the word, you never speak of the Messiah without adding this short but powerful prayer, Mehera Yigaleh. The way you would not mention a prominent rabbi without saying Shalita, or if he's no longer the living Zatzal, and things of that sort. So I think that's all Maimonides had in mind. We should not say, I want to talk to you about the Mashiach, but I want to talk to you about the Mashiach, Mehera Yigaleh. Now finally, briefly, without, full detail or citation of sources, I have a paper in Hebrew coming out on this. If anyone is interested, can drop a line in the comments. I want to talk about the fate of the Hebrew version, the one that everyone seems to know, Ani Ma'amin B'Viyat HaMashiach, that in the Holocaust and post-Holocaust world. And it's being put to music. And the way the evolution of the tune with which this song is sung follows the development of Israel, the Mishoat Tekuma, the coming out of the Holocaust into the rise of the state of Israel. What do I have in mind? The legend has it, and it's very likely a legend, that the tune was composed by a certain Hasidic Jew who was one of the trains to a death camp, and he spontaneously began singing Ani Ma'amin. And after he sang it, he said, anyone who will sing the song afterwards will be granted, great reward in the afterlife, or something of the sort. And as you would expect in a Hasidic tale, someone actually jumped off that train before it made it to Auschwitz or wherever it was going, or Treblinka, and escaped from the Nazis and made it to Israel, where he met with one of the rabbis, one of the Hasidic rabbis, and sang to him this this version of an Amin, and from here it was accepted and adopted among the Jewish people. Now, what's interesting is that if one hears the earliest renditions of the song, and there are on the web some recordings, I think from as early as, say, 1950 or maybe the late 1940s, it's sung in a deep bass voice, very slowly, as one would expect from a dirge, and it's something that fits the Holocaust. Adim Amin, Adim Amin. But as time went on, and as the Holocaust receded into memory, and the Jewish people reestablished themselves, and we built this eminently, or at least partially successful state of Israel, the verse reflects it in becoming lighter, more rhythmic, and dance tune. Mordechai ben David and others, you can hear many recordings of this on YouTube. So it mirrors the song about the belief in the Messiah, and its evolution musically from being a dirge to a rhythmic, happy dance song is really astounding. Now, it has also worked its way into the liturgy, we can call it, not just of the Jewish religion, but what I would call Israeli civic religion. But what I mean is that in government ceremonies, particularly those at one point of Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, but now even more Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day, it is sung liturgically at the close of the ceremonies in a version which is not quite as catchy and rhythmic and jumpy as Mordechai ben David, but not the dirge of the early recordings. But what's interesting is, and it's spread far beyond the so-called religious community, those who have these identifying symbols of being part of the religious community. It's, as I said, part of the civic, the ceremonies, many Israeli ceremonies, civic ceremonies on Yom HaAtzmaut, and there were cases where, at least one case where a particular eunuch of the Israeli Armored Corps, made up mostly of Tel Aviv, highly secular, non-religious Jews, spontaneously began to sing this, and this was a huge scandal. If you know how deeply the hatred for religion and for religiosity and for religious Jews runs in Israel, you can imagine the scandal that it was caused when these non-religious soldiers began singing it, and they couldn't really blame anyone. They couldn't blame rabbis for trying to spread the faith among them, because they did it spontaneously. At the same time, polls, there aren't many, but the one poll that I did see from maybe 10 years ago or so, indicate that among religious Jews, not secular Jews, not those who don't believe in anything that has to do with the Torah or God, but even among religious Jews, those who identify as religious, belief in the coming of the Messiah is maybe less than 50% now. So we have this very odd situation where Maimonides' principle, unbeknownst to the people who sing it, was actually includes an imperative to pray for the Messiah, and it itself has become a sort of prayer for the Messiah, or at least a musically recited a belief in the Messiah, at a time when even so-called believing Jews, religious Jews, seem to be having a hard time actually accepting the belief in the Messiah. So we're living again in tumultuous times, which some people take as itself an indication that the Messiah, the Mashiach, Mehera Yigoleh, is just around the corner. Thank you very much. for your attention.